Mother Nature tried its hardest, but once again, nothing can stop Max Verstappen. Right now, he picks up his 9th consecutive win, which ties Sebastian Vettel's record for most consecutive wins in F1 history. He can break that record next week at Monza. I'd say it's a safe bet that it can happen, but once again, you never know. But seriously, though, Max Verstappen, he's probably going to win next week. Anyways, before we talk about next week, we got to talk about this week. What I thought would be an extremely boring race with Verstappen winning by 45 seconds or something, it was a very eventful race, and it started on lap 1. Lap 1, or really the formation lap. It started raining. Everyone was on the slick tires. No one opted to pit because really the rain showed up by the time everyone had passed pit road, and it was pouring by the tail end of lap 1. That final sector was completely soaked. The track had changed colors. There was standing water. It was pouring. The cars were spraying water. Some opted to pit. A lot opted not to pit. The first one to pit was Sergio Perez, who started 7th, fell back to 8th or 9th, I think, on that opening lap. He was the first to pit to the intermediate tires along with Zhou Guanyu and a bunch of others. And by the time that lap 2 was finished, they had caught up to the tail end of the field because the majority of the track was wet at this point. Everyone is struggling on those slick tires. Meanwhile, Perez and everyone else are flying on the intermediates. And so at the end of all the pit stops by lap 4, Sergio Perez has a 14-second lead over Zhou Guanyu and Pierre Gasly. Imagine showing someone 5 minutes before the formation lap that after lap 3, the running order would be Sergio Perez, Zhou Guanyu, and Pierre Gasly. They would think that someone just bow-tasked the entire field like in Hungary 2021. But no, because of the different strategies, if we want to call it that, it ended up meaning Perez had a 14-second lead. Max Verstappen came out 4th, 5th, somewhere in there, and quickly made work of the guys in front of him. He was about 8 seconds behind Perez when things finally settled down. And as expected, Verstappen was closing in at a very quick pace on his teammate. But by the time he was within 3 seconds of Perez, the track dried out. So everyone starts pitting. Verstappen pits first, Perez second. Verstappen undercuts Perez, is able to jump him. And Verstappen's running away with this thing. Some good battles throughout the field every once in a while. But then, with about 15 to go, there's reports that rain will show up with 10 to go, and it will be very hard rain. 10 laps to go, oh my goodness, like a hurricane showed up. It is pouring rain so hard that people on the intermediates are flying off the track. Like there's no grip. There's so much standing water. Everyone's hydroplaning and crashing. Sergio Perez, who was in second, spun out. Zhou Guanyu crashed, which eventually brought out the red flag. Well, that in the mix of so much rain. And Perez opted to pit. And when Perez pitted for the extreme wet tires, the red flag came out. So he was really 6th when the red flag came out, but because of the last scoring loop or the last lap, whatever the rule is, Perez got to restart 3rd, which was this happened in Australia too. It's such a weird rule, but whatever, I guess. Anyways, Perez, it ended up catching up to him because he sped on the pit road, got a 5-second penalty, and lost his podium. Who got that podium in his place? Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly, in his first year for Alpine, now has 1 podium. That's Alpine's 2nd podium of the year, the first one coming at Monaco with Ocon. So Gasly and Ocon both have a podium this year. Alpine having a pretty solid season. But Gasly finished 4th in this race a couple of years ago with AlphaTauri. And yeah, he seems to really like this track. But Max Verstappen, equaling history with 9 straight wins, can break that record next week at Monza. Red Bull, they dominate. Oh my goodness. Verstappen, it's his 11th win on the season. He very well could win 20. But surely there's one that he loses, right? Right. Let's look at the finishing results. Verstappen wins, as I said. He has like 150, 60. He's going to clinch the world championship in the next 3 races or so. It's over. Yeah, his title rival finished 4th. Fernando Alonso finished 2nd. Alonso back on the podium for the first time since Canada. Very good run for him. Started 5th. Once he got into those podium places, stayed there. Actually, it looked like he was going to challenge Verstappen there for a bit on the restart, but of course, he could not. But his 2nd place finish, really good for him. Really good for, I almost said Alfa Romeo. I don't know why. For Aston Martin, for their fight for second in the Constructors, this was a huge day because Leclerc DNF'd, Mercedes struggled, McLaren made some bad pit calls. I mean, overall, this was a great day for Aston Martin, even though Lance Stroll was kind of irrelevant. Third place, Pierre Gasly, as I said, a huge podium for him, huge podium for that team. Gasly made the switch last year, decided to get out of the Red Bull program, decided to go elsewhere, went to his home team, Alpine, and in his first season, got himself a podium. And what, honestly, yes, Verstappen has been dominating this year. Red Bull has won every race, but we got to talk about how, Verstappen wins every race, but the fight for the podium has been incredible this year. We've seen 2 Alpine drivers on the podium. We've seen Fernando Alonso on the podium, Charles Leclerc on the podium, both Mercedes drivers on the podium. That's 6 already that I can think of off the top of my head. Lando Norris has been on the podium. That's 7. And then we've seen Piastri, Sainz get close to podiums. I mean, it's been extremely competitive past Verstappen, essentially. So, if it wasn't for Verstappen winning every race, I think this season would be a lot more entertaining. But the podium fight really has been fun this year. Fourth place, Sergio Perez. As I said, that pit road penalty ended up killing him. Well, really what ended up killing him was the spinning off. But if it wasn't for that, he probably would have finished second, but unfortunately not the case. He still sits second in the drivers. They extend their constructors lead. But just a disappointing finish for Perez after having such a solid day. Fifth place, Carlos Sainz did a brilliant job at the end there, defending Lewis Hamilton, holding on for fifth place. He gets a good chunk of points, jumps his teammate in the standings, helps Ferrari in the constructors. Sixth place, Lewis Hamilton, after a poor qualifying effort, able to pick up a good chunk of points on the day, which is good for him in Mercedes. Seventh place, Lando Norris, after such a promising start to the weekend, after starting on the front row, made the wrong call on the strategy to come in for the wet tires or the intermediate tires too late. And they just fell back 9th or 10th. They were able to rally back for 7th, though. 8th place, Alex Albon, a similar situation to Norris. Great qualifying effort, but because they pitted too late for the intermediates, lost a lot of track position. But still, points for Williams. That is huge for them. And Albon drove terrifically this weekend. He finishes 8th. Piastri 9th, so double points for McLaren. 10th place, Ocon, double points for Alpine, big for them. 11th place, Lance Stroll. 12th place, Nico Hülkenberg. 13th, Liam Lawson in his F1 debut. These were treacherous conditions. These were awful. We saw some, long-time F1. We saw Sergio Perez, who's got a handful of podiums in his career. He's got like 20 podiums, but he's got tons of experience in F1. We saw him go off and spin. We saw Charles Leclerc go off. We saw Zhou Guanyu crash. We saw a lot of guys with a lot of experience crashing, spinning, going off. Liam Lawson kept it clean all day. He got in this car for the first time yesterday. So a very impressive performance, if you ask me. 13th for him to keep it clean after just starting yesterday, after Daniel Ricciardo's injury. What a great debut for him. 14th, Kevin Magnussen. 15th, Valtteri Bottas. 16th, Yuki Tsunoda had a penalty. He was up in 13th, I think, before the penalty. 17th, George Russell was fighting Lando Norris for 7th and then had a puncture after some contact. So they were going to have a really good points day for Mercedes to extend that gap on second or for second place in the Constructors, but Russell ultimately last on track. Zhou Guanyu, Charles Leclerc, Logan Sargent did not finish. Oh my goodness, Ferrari. Leclerc comes in to pit for intermediate tires. They didn't have tires ready. He's sitting there in the pits. They're all sitting there. They got the guns ready. They're all standing there ready to take the tires off. Where are the new freaking tires? Oh, a month off and Ferraris again. This team is so unserious. It's funny. It's so funny how unserious this team is. One of the biggest brands on earth, one of the most fancy and fast cars. You think of Ferrari, you think of fast, you think of smart engineering, you think of everything. And then the F1 team is just a meme. And then Logan Sargent was sitting like in turn 8 where he crashed like under a tent for 50 laps. This whole race was so cursed. Like it was just so much going on. Mind-blowing race. We had Verstappen winning again, no shock there. We had rain on lap freaking 1. We had more rain later on with everyone wrecking. We had Let's see. Ferrari being Ferrari. Sargent sitting at the same place for 50 laps. There was so much chaos. This is one of the best races of the year, if you ask me. So, anyways, thanks for watching. I'm sure Verstappen will win again next week. But who's going to be on the podium next week? I think that's the question we got to start asking at this point. Is it going to be Lando Norris? Is it going to be Alex Albon? What if Albon gets a podium? I mean, that Williams is fast on the straight lines, and Monza's a bunch of straight lines. So, but thanks again for watching. I will update you on the video upload schedule in the community post. I got the next few days planned out for the first half of the week. Second half of the week, I'm still figuring out. But thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.